I call to order the meeting of the Johnson County Planning Commission for Tuesday, March the 28th, 2023. I'm Chris Iliff, the chairman. And the first item ought to be our roll call to establish our quorum.
Michael Levin,
Here.
Chris Iliff,
Here.
Roger Mason, Terry Atwell on Zoom,
Here.
George Lund,
Here.
Dave Johns,
Here.
Jim Neese, Kelly Rast on Zoom,
Present.
and Randy Downing.
Here.
And Lindsay Grisey is absent. We do have a quorum.
We do have a quorum. Thank you. You want to read the statement for us?
Hello, this meeting is now being recorded. Please silence all electronic devices. Please note this meeting is being held in the board hearing room with Planning Commission members attending in person. There is also an option for virtual attendance on Zoom webinar. If you are using Zoom, you may participate in the meeting using your computer, telephone, or other electronic device. For Zoom participants, chat will be disabled once the meeting begins. If you have trouble, please call 913-715-1700. If you would like to speak, please use the raise hand function in the Zoom app to notify planning staff of your desire to speak. To activate this function, please click raise hand in the webinar controls at the bottom of the screen. By telephone, you may raise your hand by dialing *9. Please do not utilize the raise hand function until the start of the agenda item about which you desire to comment. We will take comments from in-person attendees first, followed by Zoom participants. The Zoom moderator will call on individuals who have raised their hand. The chairman may modify these procedures as needed to conduct an orderly and efficient meeting. All public speakers will be limited to 2 minutes unless the chair designates a different time period in order to accommodate all speakers. When your name is called by the moderator, your microphone will be unmuted. Please state your name and address for the record, followed by your comments. If you share concerns, comments, or points made by others, please refrain from repeating those comments and instead note for the record that you agree with the previous individual's comments. There will be a 10 seconds remaining warning. Board members and presenters, please, Planning Commission members and presenters, please state your name every time you begin to talk so that the comments can be transcribed for the record. This is a public meeting. We are presenting live and recording the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Chris Iliff, chairman. Before we go to the public comments, I would like to give the director of the planning department just a few moments to talk about a recent public meeting with regard to the sunflower plan and comment in the event that that is relevant to anyone who is here tonight to address us.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay Leipzig, the planning director. Yes, we had a meeting last week at the Timber Ridge Activity Center. It was very, very well attended. I will say there were probably in excess of 400 people there at that meeting to talk about the sunflower plan update. Originally, it was intended to be a walkthrough open house. However, we had so many people trying to accommodate that, we had to pivot a little bit. And we divided the group into 3 different sections. We gave a short overview of the plan, kind of went through on a high level, answered some questions. And then because of that and the interest in the topic, we have now planned an additional public meeting on April the 19th at 6 p.m. And that's in the Commons area of the DeSoto High School. That is, we will have the additional meeting on April 19th. And that meeting will be probably a formal presentation from staff. We can accommodate additional people. The problem is at Timber Ridge, we just didn't have enough space to accommodate that many people for the meeting. So the format will be more inclusive. And we're planning on doing that at that time. Any additional comments for Sean? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Leipzig. Chris Iliff, now we come to the public comment section of our meeting, my favorite part of the meeting, personally. And if there's anyone who is here in person who would like to address us on any topics relevant to planning, please go ahead and stand up and go over to the microphone, and you will have 2 minutes. Anyone here? Is there anyone on Zoom who has expressed an interest in speaking to us? All right. Mr. Leipzig. Thank you, Mr. Leipzig, and we're always appreciative of Ms. Whittier's contributions to the record. The next item would be a disclosure by members of the board of conflicts of interest or ex parte communications by members with people from outside of the board. Hearing none, we will assume that there are none. Thank you. We will move on then to the agenda, which is before us. Are there any additions or deletions that any member of the board would suggest for the agenda? Mr. Leipzig, anything from you?
Nothing for me, sir.
All right. Then the next item on the agenda, F, is approval of the minutes of our February 28, 2023 meeting minutes. Are there any recommendations for changes, deletions, omissions, corrections to the February 28 meeting minutes?
Mr. Chair, Jay Leipzig, I did have one correction that was submitted by Joyce Whittier, where mentioned a article that she had submitted to the Planning Commission on carbon sequestration, and it inadvertently states it's corn sequestration in the meeting minutes. So she wanted that corrected.
All right, good. Well, with that change in the minutes suggested by Ms. Whittier, do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the meetings of February 28, 2023?
George Lund, move to approve.
Randy Downing, second.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor indicate by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The minutes of the meeting with the correction that has been suggested will be approved. So we now move on to the substantive part of our meeting, and we are going to ask the City of Overland Park give us an update on their comprehensive plan.
Thank you. Good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm Erin Oleg. I'm the manager of strategic planning in the Planning and Development Services Department of Overland Park. So here to give you an update on what we have going on in Overland Park. And the big thing is our comprehensive plan update here, what we're calling Framework OP. Here we go. Okay, I'm sure a lot of you know this. Just wanted to give some overview about a comprehensive plan. It is, it reflects what Overland Park wants to be in the future, what we want to be when we grow up. It's a policy guide that describes with text and maps our goals for directing future land use development. This planning process allows the city to be proactive and ensure orderly growth and development through the city. So Overland Park is long overdue really to have a conversation about land use. We've been having a lot of controversial development discussions coming up with in city council meetings and planning commission meetings when a development or a rezoning is proposed. This new plan should provide staff the planning commission, governing body, members of the public, some clear guidance and parameters that define our land use aspirations for the community. So this is an excellent time to take a step back, incorporate some new ideas, new trends, best practices in planning. And as you can see in the last bullet here, our plan is 40 years old or more. We haven't been able to find the original document. So a lot has changed in Overland Park during that 40-year time period. So one major change revolves around demographics. Since the 1980s, Overland Park's population has doubled. We've also become more diverse. Our household sizes are smaller, meaning people are having less children, and our population is getting older. So this is all important because different demographics, ethnicities, and age groups, they want different things from a community. And we want to make sure that our plan is representative of all those people that want to live in Overland Park. Another significant change is physical. City boundaries now extend nearly the entire county north-south from 47th Street down to 207th. And here's a map here. I'm showing 1986 aerial of 119th and Metcalf, and then 2022. And this used to be essentially farmland. What was the Sprint campus is, just a dream at this point. There's another example, 135th and Metcalf, again, just in the mid 1980s. Doesn't seem that long ago, but that was farmland as well. The city has also seen a lot of redevelopment. The most obvious is in downtown Overland Park, shown here on the maps. This demonstrates that we're not just a brand new suburb, but we're beginning to age in some parts of the community. So we're needing to provide strategies for redevelopment and reinvestment in some of these areas. It's also important for this plan to align with the vision outlined in our Forward OP Strategic Vision Plan, which was adopted in 2019. This planning effort will be very similar to that, and that will have a lot of public engagement. A lot of the ideas in the comprehensive plan will come out of a public engagement process. This last May, the city did hire a consultant to help staff with this process. It is also guided by a mayoral appointed steering committee. We have 31 members, including a couple teens on that group. We also have 4 technical advisory groups that will look at some specific topics in more detail. That's housing choice, mobility options, environmental resources, and then land use. And then also the general public will be involved with this. So we are about halfway through the planning process right now. If you're looking at the chart, we're about in the testing scenarios area. We've completed most of the work to kind of gather data, gather initial feedback from the public, and the technical work is starting to take shape now. Our goal is to have the plan completed by the end of this year. So again, as I mentioned, the city's existing comprehensive plan is about 40 years old. We do review it annually. Updates are made from time to time, particularly if we have major changes to the community, like if we annex land or anything like that. But the outline of the plan has been essentially unchanged during that 40-year time period. It's been a good plan for us, provided a good foundation for our growth, but it is time for an update. The planning process also provides an opportunity for us to look at other specific plans we have in our community, and even those that have been created outside of the community, such as the Johnson County Housing Study and the MARC Climate Action Plan. Those will things that we will analyze and evaluate for its applicability to Overland Park. And again, like I said, a lot has changed over 40 years. This new plan will look at emerging planning topics such as housing and affordability issues, mobility options for residents and employees beyond the automobile, environmental resources, and again, actively engaging with the public to get feedback. We also understand there's a need to tie our land use decisions with long-term financial sustainability. And so we will be doing a cost of service analysis as part of this. to make sure that our land use decisions aren't impacting our community financially and putting us in a bad place. Again, public engagement is critical. We had our first public meeting in October. We didn't have 450 people come to our meeting, but we had, that sounds great. We had about 300 come to this, and then we had some supplemental online engagement, and then we had something called Meetings in the Box where people can have kind of mini meetings on the side. We're gearing up to have some more engagement this spring, and finally probably this fall when we're rolling out the draft plan. So with that, thank you again for your time, and I'm available to answer any questions you have.
Zollik, I have a couple of questions for you. This is Chris Hyleth, Chairman. I remember when the Vision Metcalf plan first rolled out, maybe 10 years ago, something like that. And how do you view that plan as originally conceived as compared to what's going on right now and what you perceive to be happening in the near future?
Yeah, Vision Metcalf was 2008. We did do a 10-year status update. We did that in 2018 to just kind of see how we've been doing. We think it's been a very good plan for us, particularly in downtown Overland Park, where we were able to kind of codify those recommendations, and we developed a form-based code. And so that really resulted in a lot of the redevelopment that you see. There was also some transportation improvements. We were able to get some federal dollars for some transit updates, bus shelters, things like that. And so as part of this planning process, we will evaluate Vision Metcalf, see if the recommendations in that plan are still relevant today, and if there are some potential ways to expand that to other major corridors throughout the city.
A related question, if you don't mind. I see an awful lot of apartments coming in there, this redevelopment that just seems to be renovating downtown Overland Park in a visually good way. Are those apartments filled up, or how are the landlords doing in all of those new apartments there?
Yeah, as part of our annual population estimate, we do touch base with a lot of the major, apartment facilities, and they're about 95, 90%, 96% full. Yeah.
Okay. Other questions or comments from members of the board, both here and on Zoom?
Hi, this is Kelly Rast, a commissioner on Zoom. I just had a quick question. What's the best way to get the word out to the public to know about your meetings? Is it to go to frameworkop.org, or how are you getting the word out, and how can we help spread the word for you?
Yes, that would be great. Thank you, Commissioner. Frameworkop.org. It is on the screen up here. There's an opportunity to sign up for updates. And so we kind of have an e-newsletter blast that goes out. And then you can, on your own, keep up to date by visiting the website. We're working closely with our communications division to publicize and promote key events and things like that going on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. I have one more question. When I'm also on a zoning board as well, so it's kind of a little bit related, but I was just curious, from a Overland Park standpoint, do they consider kind of the golden rules of, the unincorporated areas when they start kind of infringing, intermixed with them? If that makes sense?
No, can you describe that?
Sorry. So, there are different possibilities where certain landowners can be annexed by the city, right? And they're kind of, for the most part, being surrounded by an unincorporated area. And as far as being a person on the zoning board, we tend to follow kind of the golden rule criteria stuff of what is consistent with the surrounding area. And so I was just wondering, how much does Overland Park play into that when they are sort of infringing upon other areas that aren't part of Overland Park. Does that make more sense?
I think so. I'll take an attempt. We do follow, we also have golden rules that we follow in, when we're in areas that are close to unincorporated areas of Johnson County, we work closely with county planning staff to see if there's any plans going on, anything that's in conflict, and they do the same thing with us. So hopefully that answers your question.
Ms. Oleg, and just to make the record clear, the golden rules have nothing to do with doing unto others as you would have them do unto you. It has to do with the
Correct.
golden case.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's correct.
Yeah. And I appreciate that. Let me ask you this. This is of interest to us in the incorporated area, unincorporated area. There is a large swath of Overland Park that is not contiguous with the rest of Overland Park, basically running down along state line between State Line and Kenneth Road and Mission Road to the west. How do you provide services to that area of Overland Park that really is pretty distant from the heart of Overland Park?
Yes, that's something that we're going to evaluate as part of the comprehensive plan and how the city, does grow in the future. They changed the annexation rules after that development went in. And so there's a lot more, steps that you have to follow to have, an annexation that isn't contiguous anymore. We work closely with Johnson County Wastewater on, what services are available, the sewer capacity, Water One, our own, fire department, school district. So, that coordination will continue anytime we have a development proposal.
I have seen on occasion an Overland Park policeman pulling over someone in an area that is not actually in Overland Park. And while I didn't interrupt him in his business, it did make me curious. Is there an agreement between Overland Park and the county with regard to the enforcement of traffic laws and other infractions where there might be some overlap or not overlap between the county and the city?
I cannot speak to that, but if you would like, I can look into it and get back to you. Get through Jay.
All right. That'll be fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any other questions for Ms. Oleg? If not, then thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Sean Penley, planning staff. I'd just like to thanks to Ms. Oleg again for presenting that update. And I would mention, we had an opportunity, our county planning staff to meet with the city planning staff at the end of last year. It was a good opportunity to get updates on these projects. And that's when Aaron first let us know about this update for the comprehensive plan. And I think it'd be worthwhile to bring back an update as the city gets closer to ready to adopt the plan. There may be some additional updates we can provide the county. And we do continue to have that coordination because, as was mentioned, there are projects that are still getting developed in the fringe areas, and it's always good for us to coordinate on that, but we'd be happy to bring back an update to when the city gets closer to adopting the plan.
Good.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Penley. Appreciate it. All right. Next item on the agenda, H, regulating accessory buildings.
Good evening, Michelle Leiniger, planning staff. This is the public hearing for accessory building text amendments tonight. None of this should be a surprise. This is very similar to what you saw 2 months ago. So I'm just going to go through the highlights here, basically the memo, kind of give you those highlights of what was changed. A lot of the chapter changes or article changes are our basic things, like we had to add the new process and we had to change a certain name to add this. And so those are just minor things we're not going to talk about. You can see all those in your draft regulations attachment. All the changes we are making are in this attachment. And so those are Article 2, 3, 4, 6, and 14. Those are minor changes is what we would consider. Article 17 really gets to begin into the guts. Really, 18 has all the details in it. The changes in 17 are just a crazy chart that takes all those standards and regulations and puts them together in this quick chart. What is in your attachment doesn't show all the track changes. I see that it accepted all the changes when I put it in this document. So I will fix that. What you see in that document is accepted. Up here, you can see the tracking changes with the strike throughs being deletions, underlines being additions. We did do some updating on here, found some inconsistencies between like the PAE district, which is adult use district, had a regulation for accessory building heights while it's not a permitted use. We did transfer, there was some disconnect between what is shown in Article 18 for the maximum height per district for accessory buildings and this table. So we made sure that those came across consistently, specifically in the PECLP had that accessory buildings could be 110 feet tall. I'm not so sure we really support that. So just some updating, some housekeeping in this. There's some detailed changes in one of the notes in H down below. And then here's where you see really the big first change that's being proposed in the maximum number of accessory buildings in the districts. So previously it was 3, we're proposing 4. Continuing Article 18, like I said, that's really that's the accessory structure and buildings article. That's where you see the most of the changes. And just to give some highlights to this. So what we have in the white columns are the current regulations, and then the blue columns are the proposed regulations. You saw this last time. I kind of added to it to give some more details. This is not the table that's in Article 18. This is just a summary table. So you can see that under the total main floor area, increase that from 900 square feet to 1,680 square feet, and that is for the first acre. And then the increase for between greater than 1 acre, less than 10 acres. So in between those two, there's a calculation where you get 900 square feet for that first acre, and then 300 square feet for each additional acre thereafter. So again, we're updating that to be 1,680 square feet, and then updating the prorated thereafter acreage square foot allowance from 300 to 560 square feet. Really, that 1,680 gives you a 40 by 40 building. And that is something typical that we see. And then adding on to that, we allow extra area for open wall area, what most people call porches. on those accessory buildings. So they'll have the accessory buildings and then they'll have the overhangs over the front. Currently 300 square foot is permitted. We bumped that up to 400. That equates out to having a 40 by 40 building. So you get 10 feet out from that. So you'll get that 400 square feet addition, open walled accessory building. That means open on 3 or 4 walls. So it doesn't have to be attached. It could be like what you would see at a park where it's just a pavilion. It's got no walls, but it's got a roof. Could be a carport, something like that. Gazebo, giant gazebo. So that gives you kind of an additional square footage. And then again, proposing to up the number of accessory buildings from 3 to 4. Sometimes we see some of the older farms that have, you know, a pump house, a farrowing shed, a barn, a machine shed, naming all the structures on my husband's old farm. And so really, you know, 3 to 4, that most people don't bump against that, but it periodically happens. And then actually we allow for almost an extra accessory building. In the proposed regulations, we're calling it a bonus building. Currently, a tool shed smaller than 120 square feet and a pool house smaller than 200 square feet are basically exempt from your total permitted square feet. So if you had a 1 acre property, today's regulations, you could have a 900 square feet in accessory building with a 300 square foot porch attached. And then you could have an additional smaller shed that doesn't count towards that overall acreage. There's been this one's a little funky. It doesn't specify how many you can have. We've had a policy that it's really one. You can't have 120 square foot sheds. We really tried to, because people have asked. They have asked, can I have, 5 of these? That's not really the intent. Here, we're trying to clarify it. And really, for our purposes, it doesn't matter whether you keep tools or a lawnmower or your pool mechanical equipment or what you necessarily store in there. So we're proposing to update that to say one of your bonus buildings, and it can be 200 square feet or smaller. At 200 square feet, not only is it from the existing regulations, that's the number for a building permit. So if you're 200 square feet or smaller, no building permit for those little buildings. So we're trying to make this a little cleaner, a little more friendly, a little more flexibility, but also kind of help staff with some of those things that we've noticed over the years. And then showing this again because these things are hard to visualize. So if you had 1 acre, we've already gone into that, but what would it be if you had 5 acres? Currently, you could have 2,100 square feet of accessory building. Under the proposed, you could have 3,920 square feet. And that's, again, excluding that amount for the open walled accessory building and excluding that bonus building. And then the other big proposed change is our accessory building use permit. This is, the name has changed slightly from what you saw last time. It was just called an accessory building permit in the last information you saw. We thought that may be kind of confusing with an actual building permit. So because you still do need a building permit if it's over 200 square feet. So we're calling this an accessory building use permit, because really that is what this process is permitting, is that use with those details. So we would call it a ABUP. So any of our zoning board members, if you're familiar with the accessory dwelling unit permit, this is a permit for to request for something that exceeds the standards for an accessory dwelling unit. So if you want it bigger, if you want it in a different location, any situation where you don't meet the standards. So it's mirrored after that. It's the same process as a conditional use permit, which is what the process is today for an accessory building that does not meet the standards. Requires public notice, public hearing before the appropriate zoning board with a recommendation by the zoning board, and then final action at Board of County Commissioners. Same process. The one thing that has been our biggest hiccup and biggest discussion is conditional use permits have an expiration. Expiration requires people to come back and get a renewal. It's time consuming for both staff and for property owners. Costs money for property owners. Granted, it's reduced than a typical CUP, but then things fall off the table after 10 years, and it's really a headache for everybody around when it's unlikely that a renewal for an accessory building would not be supported. Just as a caveat to that, there are provisions in the regulations for if there is an issue. So if there is an issue with the accessory building use permit, there are revocation standards. And again, this is similar to what you would see with the CUP. There's a process in there. This will save us a lot of time. And on the front of the memo, just to note that 32% of the properties with CUPs would still have to obtain a permit after their existing CUP expires. But 67% of the approved CUPs, if this is approved, would no longer need any sort of approval process, because then they would fall within what is permitted by right. So we would get rid of a lot of applications that really just take up time and for everybody, when we could be spending our time on other things. And then we have Article 23, which is the conditional use permits.
Excuse me,
Yes.
before you leave 18,
Yeah.
George Lynn, I just would you give me the definition of an accessory building? Your definition,
My definition.
your definition.
Or the definition, there's a definition in the zoning and subdivision regulations, and that's what we would use. I don't have the definition right in front of me. Basically, it's anything that is not a primary structure. So if you have a house, that is your primary structure, or primary use, and then anything else is intended to be accessory.
Not attached. Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. If it was attached, it would just be part of your house. So if you have a 5-car garage attached to your house, that doesn't qualify as an accessory building because it's attached to your primary use. So these are detached buildings.
Mr. Chair, this is Mike Levin. I apologize to
the commission. I just realized, and that's all, I don't know if I need to excuse myself from this. I actually have a building, 2 buildings with a CUP and now with the no expiration potential. Is that something you think I should remove myself from?
Mr. Levin, I don't think you need to remove yourself. I think you can participate in the discussion. But I do think that when it comes time for a vote to approve this, to go on to the Board of County Commissioners, you should probably at that point recuse yourself from voting.
Okay, thank you.
Jim Neese, I've got a question. Make sure I understand this. I own 10 acres. And I have a house on the 10 acres. I can then put a 1,600 square foot accessory building on there. And I don't have it in front of me, 4 additional accessory enclosures. Is that right?
No.
Okay.
If you have greater than 10 acres, the limitations don't apply to you. So we have limitations on size 1 acre or less. We have limitations of 1.1 acres to 9.99 acres. And then over 10 acres, it's not on this chart and it's not in the memo, it's actually in, it's on page 19 of your attachment document.
That's what
Yeah.
Jim needs. It says, make sure I think I'm not quite understanding it. If I have 1 acre or less, then I can have 1,680 square feet
Correct.
total floors on my house and the additional.
Not unattached.
Okay, so I could have my home and a 1,680 square foot unattached dwelling.
Correct.
Okay. How does that affect the septic tank rules? The reason I say that, I want you to refresh my memory what they are in the county right now. You have to have how many acres? I think it's 3.
2.
2. Okay, let's change it to 2. So it seems like to me that would that 1,680 square feet have to have its own independent septic system?
Only if, let me caveat it here. That's something that we review at the building permit. They have to submit a paperwork from the environment department saying that they had their septic system inspected. Not all accessory buildings have utilities attached to them.
Well, okay, but
So
I'm going to make an assumption. If I build this, it may be a machine shed that wouldn't have that. But I'm also thinking of a mother-in-law building, or my
And-
neighbor wants to have a house. He doesn't want to build a house and he wants
Right.
another.
And you're talking about if there is a dwelling unit in it, then it's an accessory dwelling unit.
Okay, what's the
It's-
definition of? So could I have I've got one. Could I have a horse barn with a bathroom in it?
You bet.
Would you have to have a separate septic system?
That depends on the capacity of your septic system and any information we get from the county environmental department. They're looped into that. We don't have any knowledge in our department of septic system capacities, and those are individual. We're not going to know if your septic is failing or if it has the
Hmm.
capacity for more connections or not. So
Okay,
that's
what about-
information you have to prove to us at the building permit.
Okay. And what about a barn dominium, for example, small barn dominium? I think this is fine, but I think that if you do not have this defined real well, okay, somebody's going to have a piece of property out there and they're going to build a 1,680 square foot building is a pretty good sized building.
Yes.
Half the homes within a quarter of a mile or here of this building are under 1,800 square feet. So I'm just begging the question. I think that's something that somebody's
And-
saying, I can do this and have this over here, and you won't, you won't let me take a 10 acres and cut off a 1 acre lot and 2 acre lot and put a
Right.
accessory dwelling.
What we have kind of two avenues that you're talking about. If it is a true accessory building, barndominium, we'll use that term for you, which means it's a big barn with a little dwelling unit in it. If there is a house on the property, then that barndominium would have to follow the accessory building regulations. Accessory dwelling unit regulations. It does come into play with the total allowed main floor area. We do have definitions of both. So that's pretty clear. And there is further in chapter 18 definitions and regulations and standards for that accessory dwelling unit. The key is whether it meets if what is included in that accessory building meets the standards of a dwelling unit. So it has sleeping quarters, it has cooking facilities, and it has bathroom facilities.
And I don't want to blame this. I guess the one thing that I'm concerned about, if there's not confusion, is because if I own 10 acres, let's say if I own 40 acres, I can only subdivide that one time through certain things.
Right.
And I don't want somebody that owns 10 or 15 acres or 5 acres, okay, saying so-and-so down the street can have this 1,600 square foot building here. And I have to go through a bunch of hoops to have something on my property. That's the only point I want to make. And I'll have to go back and read this because I'm not sure that.
Yeah, and we already have regulations for that accessory dwelling unit. This is not changing that. It's just changing the amount of accessory building area you can have on the property. It's really based on conversations we have with people and what they submit in their building permit as to what kind of avenue we're looking at. Everything's based on the amount of acreage. And if you have a barndominium and that's all you build, that is considered your primary residence because it's the primary use of the property. We have people that will build,
Not if I have a 4,000 square foot house and I put a barndominium on my acreage and back. I still have my 4,000 square foot house.
right, but it's whichever comes first. You can't have an accessory use if you don't have a primary use. So for example, we get a lot of, we'll get a few building permits in and their plot plans will show future house, but they'll show a large garage with a dwelling unit in it. Well, they want to build the garage with the dwelling unit in first. And we will work with them to meet the accessory dwelling unit standards with that, even though it is coming first as a primary. It's timing. And you can't have an accessory without a primary. So whatever comes first is a primary, even though it may be secondary later.
Mr. Chairman. Jay Leipzig, if I could just note, Karen Miller is able to answer some questions. She wrote the original regulations on the ADUs and so it might be helpful in this conversation.
So Karen Miller, and just it's important to note that accessory dwelling units are a type of accessory building. So first you start looking at the accessory building. You have to meet all the regulations for an accessory building, which pertains to everything that Michelle's done, the size and all of that. And if you choose to put a dwelling unit in that accessory building, then it becomes an accessory dwelling unit. And you also have to then meet another level of regulation.
Not according to what she said. She just said, Jimmy, it's your first building. I have
So-
go out and buy
so give
5
me
acres and I build a house.
Just one sec. So just looking at that accessory building, you start out with a shell. It has to meet all of the regulations Michelle's talking about. You add a dwelling unit to it, then it's an accessory dwelling unit. That's assuming that there's a second house on the property. So let's move. So accessory dwelling unit is an idea that only pops up when there's two dwellings on a property. And our kind of idea of two dwellings on a property is your big house, 4,000, 10,000 square feet, whatever it is, plus your little mother-in-law's quarter. We get people, like Michelle said, all the time. And it's kind of a money thing. So they buy their 10 acres and they let's say they want to do their big garage, but in the corner, they want to put a little apartment because they want to come out, work on the property over the weekend or something. So that meets all of the requirements for a dwelling. And it's the only structure on the property. So when it comes in, it's the house, at least for the time being. And there's a phasing issue. Okay, so when they pull that building permit, we review it as the house, but we know another dwelling is coming along. So we help them look ahead to what they have to do in the future. And, it sounds a little complicated, but if you think about how it used to be, this is something people want to do. They do it all the time. They want to have that little apartment in their garage. And we used to tell them no. And so, yeah, it's a little bit complicated, but it helps a lot of people do what they want to do.
Karen, you're not talking about little apartment in a garage. You're talking about, I buy 5 acres today and I live there 5 years and I sell it to Jay. Jay moves in and now he wants to have a little accessory building for his mother-in-law there. Or he wants to have a building with a bathroom in it or whatever. And he comes in and applies for an accessory building 10 years later, 5 years later, and he can, he doesn't have the same restrictions as somebody wanting to divide up their property. I mean, most of the people, first of all, you haven't had very many of these that come in want to have a building separate from their garage. Anyway, I don't want to belay the point. I'm just saying, it sounds like this is not as, my way of thinking, as clean. And I realize you all have to put up, and we in the zoning boards have to put up with people coming back in 5 and 10 years and having to redo it. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't get rid of that and minimize the work that goes into that and the cost for the person that does that. But I'm not sure that's a clean deal the way you've got it. Enough said.
So just to note that there's two different levels of accessory dwelling unit. One is an administrative approval, which has a whole list of things that you have to meet. And one of them is you can't go over 900 square feet in livable area. But if you go over that, you can ask for an accessory dwelling unit permit to allow that. So that's reviewed by everybody. But the issue today isn't that accessory dwelling unit permit. It's just the size of accessory dwelling units and accessory buildings. I'm sorry. So, but you still can only put a 900 square foot dwelling unit inside of it for administrative approval. You still have to come ask for permission to get a larger dwelling.
I'm going to try to simplify this a little bit if I can. In my opinion, we have existing regulations with regard to accessory dwelling units. Those are done. The county has approved those, and that's not what we're talking about tonight. All we're talking about tonight are accessory buildings, not accessory dwelling units, accessory buildings. And here, the number of acres and the permitted number of buildings and the permitted number of square feet is all set out for us here And it's very straightforward. And as close as I can tell, these are very consistent with what we asked that the staff come up with at a meeting 2 or 3 months ago. So let's not talk about dwelling units tonight because that's not on the board. That is not what we're dealing with. We're dealing with strictly the number of buildings and the number of square feet that are permitted based upon the amount of acreage that you have. Am I clear? Is that, everybody understand?
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's-
Chairman,
let's
this is
move
Terry.
on then.
This is Terry Atwell. I wholeheartedly agree with you. Like, to me, this accessory building is what, like, I would call a pole barn, a place where people store lawn equipment, my tractors, if I have a pull behind trailer. To me, an accessory building is for storage of that kind of stuff, not a living quarters like the dwelling. So thank you for clarifying that.
And I just want, this is Michelle Leiniger, I want to make sure that splitting 10 acres, that's something completely different from your accessory building. We do have people that have 10 acres, have multiple accessory buildings, want to come in and split, and we deal with those as far as setbacks and in relation to the new parcels. And in that situation at that time. So this really is what you get. You come in today, I'm going to tell you this, and that's what you can build. I think I was done. Yeah.
Roger Mason, I got a question for you. In general, you're just increasing capacity here by about 25% and eliminating the sunset on a conditional use permit. Is that correct?
It's about 87% increase.
I passed with that in school.
And yeah, it's changing our process to get rid of that CUP process that's onerous for everybody and an unwanted expiration on, that's like putting an expiration on your house. You have to come back every 10 years. That's not realistic.
Okay.
So staff does recommend holding a public hearing, recommends approval of the text amendment as shown in your accessory building regulation draft, and answer any other questions. You can open the public hearing.
Are there any objections here to the staff setting the accessory building units, the regulations here before us tonight for a public hearing?
None.
We've published for a public hearing tonight.
Right.
So you either have to defer it are your options, or to open the public hearing and take public comment and then close and do action, or you can open the public hearing and continue it to another date.
If we can vote tonight, then yeah, then let's do that. All right. Do I hear a motion for approval of the regulations as they've been presented to us here tonight?
You have to open
Mr.
the
Chairman?
public hearing.
Jay Leipzig, you need to first open the public hearing.
The public hearing is now open. Anyone here that would like to comment on these? I'll make a comment. I think that this is a real step forward for the unincorporated area of Johnson County. For people who are living in rural areas with acreage, the ability to put up a pole barn or a vehicle barn or whatever without a lot of administrative pushback and having to have hearings or anything like that. I think that's a great idea. And I'm all for that. And I think that the regulations, and as I was looking at the square footage here, this is consistent with what we recommended a couple of months ago. And so I think we ought to proceed on.
Yeah, Terry, well, I agree. On our zoning board, I would say 75% of the stuff that comes before our zoning board is regarding an accessory building because they need a little bit bigger space. So I'm all for getting this going. Thank you.
Hi, this is Commissioner Rast. I just need a note for the record that I'm in the same boat as Commissioner Levin. I'm currently have a CUP that would, if this was adopted, would just sort of be grandfathered in under all the new regulations. So I just want to note that for the record, and thank you, Michelle, for your presentation.
So we have two members of the commission who have a potential conflict, and they have identified that for us, and I would ask that they stand down when it comes to a vote here. Any other comments? If not, then do I hear a motion for a recommendation of
Mr. Chairman?
accepting the, yes, Mr.
Chairman
Leipzig.
Jay Leipzig, sorry to bother you. And this is, you need to close the public hearing, then take the vote.
It's been a while.
I
It's been a
apologize.
while. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah,
I've been doing this long enough, Chris.
that's right. We're going to close the public hearing at this point. Public hearing is now closed and we are open for a motion to forward to the Board of County Commissioners the draft accessory building regulations that we have before us tonight.
Mr. Chairman, Jim Neese, I move that we make a motion that we pass accessory building regulations on the county commissioners as presented to us on the draft this evening.
George
Terry
Lund,
Atwell, second.
Terry,
Oh, Mr. Lund.
Oh, you can have it, George. Go ahead.
go ahead, Terry.
We have 2 seconds and the secretary is free to choose whichever one they want. All right. All those in favor of the motion indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Okay, then the draft accessory building regulations will go to the Board of County Commissioners for their action. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on the agenda is the Sunflower Army Ammunition Conceptual Land Use Plan Updates.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jay Leipzig. I'll just reiterate again, the date. Our next public information meeting will be April the 19th at 6:00 PM at the DeSoto High School Commons area. With that, I'll turn it over to Diane Wickland.
Good evening, Diane Wickland, Planning Department. I'm here to just do a quick overview of the update to the Sunflower area plan. So just some background information here. So the Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant Conceptual Land Use Plan, which is part of the Rural Comprehensive Plan, was adopted in 1998 in response to the planned disposal of the Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant property. That plan addresses the area southwest of the city of DeSoto. The plan was viewed as an opportunity to establish policies and guidelines for redevelopment of the Sunflower site. By the end of 2022, the city of DeSoto had annexed just over 1/3 of the plan's study area. This equates to roughly 16 square miles of the 44 square mile study area. Given the scale of this annexation, the Planning Commission decided to form a subcommittee to review and update the Sunflower area plan. The purpose of this update is to keep the Rural Comprehensive Plan current to reflect the recent annexations by City of DeSoto. And the only proposed changes to the county's comprehensive plan are sections related to the 1998 Sunflower Area Plan. This map is showing the existing policy area map, which is like the future land use plan for the county, for the unincorporated part of the county. And so this is our current policy area map. And you can see here the pink area where it says community in a park plan. That's the Sunflower Area Plan. And so that's the focus of the update, is this pink area. And just a quick reminder that our policy area map, our rural comprehensive plan, has 3 policy areas to it. 2 are the rural traditional policy area, and then the rural policy area. Those are fairly similar in that they maintain rural character, promote agricultural production and uses. The density in those 2 policy areas are 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. And then the 3rd policy area is the urban fringe policy area, which is the blue area on that map, but it's really for the fringe areas around the city limits of the cities and then out into the county area. And so that urban fringe area is anticipated urban expansion within 10 years. That area we coordinate with the cities, with the adjacent cities and their future land use plans. So this is a copy of the Sunflower Area Plan, the future land uses. They call it a concept plan. This is the plan that was adopted in 1998. This is the plan that we're updating. And then this map kind of says it all. So what's happening with this map is all the gray area is area that's now within city limits of DeSoto. It shows the area, the very large area that they annexed. And this is also, so everything that's in color is remaining land out in the county. And those different colors designate the future land uses that were shown in this 1998 plan. And so what you're looking at is just kind of the remaining county land for this area. And so the purpose of the subcommittee was to look at that plan and decide what do we want to do with that plan and what do we want to do with those future land uses. So the Planning Commission, the subcommittee, held 5 meetings, including a bus tour of the area, and collected a lot of information from different county departments, and then analyzed that information, had several discussions. And so, and then as a result, at the end of all of those meetings, the subcommittee did recommend that the 1998 Sunflower Area Plan be dissolved and that the remaining county land be designated as rural policy area within the county's future land use map. And so if you remember, one of the first slides I showed is our current policy area map. This proposed policy area map is showing the subcommittee's recommendation. And so the blue square area represents the boundary of the study area or the plan area. And what you'll see now, instead of that ring of the future land use area, different designations, now we're just reverting and showing the rural policy area for the remaining land out in the county. And again, just a reminder that rural policy area, the density is 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres, and promotes rural character and agricultural uses. So the reasons for the recommendation from the subcommittee are as follows here. The city of DeSoto has annexed over 1/3 of the land recognized in the 1998 Sunflower Plan study area. The proposed rural policy area preserves rural character. The rural policy area also reflects current zoning and conditions out in this area, and also preserves the status quo, but also maintains some flexibility for potential city annexation and development. And then just also as a reminder, here is a copy of DeSoto's future land use plan, that they do have their own future land use plan that they use as a guide for their development. So implementing this recommendation from the subcommittee, in order to implement the recommendation, amendments to the comprehensive plan need to be done. And so, in order to replace the future land uses designated by the Sunflower Plan within the rural policy area, the following amendments to the rural comprehensive plan are needed. First is to revise the policy area map, which is map 2, chapter 2 of the plan. And that's by removing the future land use designations in that sunflower area plan and replacing it with the rural policy area. The second amendment would be to update chapter 3 area plans with current information regarding the sunflower area plan. It's also an opportunity in that chapter to update information regarding other area plans that we have had in the past. And so it's a good chapter to kind of document the different area plans. And then the final amendment would be to remove the 1998 Sunflower Area Plan from Appendix F. So that's in a nutshell what the subcommittee recommended and the reasons why. So the next steps are to hold a second public information meeting hosted by county planning staff. We had a first public information workshop that was last week on March 21st. And as Jay stated earlier, we had tremendous turnout, much more than anticipated. And so the room where we held the meeting just was not large enough. So, but we kind of adapted quickly and tried to accommodate people. We kind of ran through I kind of described what we've been going through here tonight. We did that 3 different times, trying to kind of bring everybody in so they could hear the information. And so we were able to provide that information about the update, answer questions the best we could. However, then we did decide that we felt like, because of the turnout, we felt like we wanted to do a second public information meeting. And so that date is tentatively scheduled for April 19th. It'll be at the DeSoto High School. And we will send out flyers again to let people know that. And then also we'll put that on our county Facebook page as well as the planning department's webpage. And then after that, then the planning commission will hold a public hearing when you select a date for that, for the proposed amendments to the plan. Tentatively, that day for the public hearing, we have published, just, due to the timing and the 20-day requirement that we have published that public hearing date for April 25th. But obviously, the planning commission can change that date We will have had that second public information meeting before April 25th, but the planning commission may want to wait and do that later. That's fine as well. And then finally, then the planning commission will hold a public hearing, and then they'll submit their final recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners to be considered for final action. So those are the next steps. And just want to add real quick, because somebody might want to know or ask this question, but in terms of public outreach, what we did was, first thing that we did was we sent out a flyer in the mail inviting to all landowners within that planning study area, inviting them to the public meeting. Second, it was posted on the county's Facebook page and social media. And then third, it's on the county planning department's webpage. So those were the three different mechanisms for public outreach. So I think I'll stop there for questions.
Hi, this
Thank
is
you.
Commissioner Rass. Thanks, Diane, for that. I just had a question. What's been so far the response from the public? Do you have a feel from that last meeting with the 400 people?
Yes, and Jay and Sean can add to this too. You know, I think at that meeting last week, I think people really were just kind of taking in information. I think people had questions about, you know, are you trying to rezone my property with this plan update? No, this is for future land use designations. It's not rezoning anybody's property. So there were questions about that. There were questions about the, you know, if there's street improvements as part of this plan update. There are not. So we talked about the county's kind of future transportation plan that's in place. I think I feel like I got the sense that people felt like that rural policy area was appropriate, that it reflected the current zoning and character of the area out there. Jane, Sean, or anybody else that was there at that meeting, if you want to add any.
Yes, thanks, Diane. Sean Penley. I would agree with what Diane said. A lot of the concerns were regarding any activity going on in that area. And there is some confusion, I think, because obviously with the city of DeSoto basically doubling in size and annexing the entire 9,000 acre property for Sunflower, former Army ammunition plant, that will have a great impact. And with the Panasonic development, and there is going to be an increase in development and activity, traffic, potential impacts for future development. So there's a lot of confusion about what is going to be done in the cities and what's going to be done in the remaining unincorporated area. So there's a lot of questions about that. What is going to happen in the future? And how does this impact me as a landowner in this area? So we tried to explain that and clarify that there is definitely going to be a difference between anything that's developed in the city and anything in the county. There were a lot of questions about annexation. How can the city annex, and can the city continue to annex, both for the city of Olathe, city of DeSoto, Olathe, and Gardner? There's some question all the way around, because all three of those cities are kind of on the fringe and have potential future expansion areas. So there's a lot of question about that. And then, as Diane mentioned, future road impacts. Are there any plans for road improvements? Not as part of this plan. So we wanted to clarify that as well. Although we do identify the CARNIP designations on the policy area map. That's the way it always has been. We want to keep that so people understand where the arterial roads are and where they will continue to have increase in traffic. But there is no plan for road improvements with this plan, but that may need to be evaluated in the future. So there's a lot of questions about just future growth and development in this area. And so I think although there were a lot of people and a lot of, we had to try to shuffle around, like Jay and Diane mentioned, with how we handled the group of people, they were appreciative that we were meeting with the public and letting them know about what was going on. So a lot of information, and it was really good to get that turnout, and hopefully we'll provide updates as we have the next public information meeting to answer more questions and get more public input. And then really the public hearing, I think, is going to be helpful to get any other thoughts on that as to their
That's-
preference for the land use policy?
Jimney's, I was honored to go to that meeting. And first of all, I know the staff was a little bit concerned about the fact that so many people showed up and we had to have 3 different presentations. And I didn't really look at that as a negative. First of all, it just shows you how informed the people in our county are and how concerned they are about their property and what's going on in the future. And the fact that you're going to have another meeting, I think will get everybody together, but I think everybody left there with a lot of questions answered. You know, they had a lot of questions that had nothing to do with what our subcommittee was working on. But that's a good thing because a lot of people had no idea what Carnap was. They thought the road was going to be changed. They don't have it. They didn't have any idea. One gentleman asked, where are all these people going to live? Well, that wasn't our tenor to answer that question, but we did answer it by saying that, you know, DeSoto's going to have a plan for high intensity and so on and so forth. So I thought it was real good. And I think the most important thing that came out of it, hopefully everybody understood that the subcommittee is recommending really that there not be any major change. There's going to be change out there in the future. It's going to be drastic in the future. How far out the future is, I don't have any idea. But for right now, it was our recommendation, and hopefully that will be presented to county commissioners to keep the feel of the area what it is now, not to change it drastically, and let time and energy and development, which is going to ultimately change that part of the county, but it's going to be quite a while from now. So I think it was great. The fact that 400 or 500 people came out there, how cool is that? And, you know, took part in grassroots, what's going on in your community. So thanks to the staff for putting that on.
Any further comments with regard to the Sunflower Plan? If not, thanks very much, Ms. Wickland. Appreciate it. Next item on the agenda is the New Century Air Center Executive Airport Land Use Compatibility Plan updates.
The Sunflower. Would you like to set a public hearing for April 25th, or is that something you'd like to consider?
Let me put this to the board. Are we ready to set this for a public hearing for April the 25th?
Roger Mason, I think it's a good idea to set that date. We can always back that up if we find at that next public meeting there's too much dissension.
I was just looking at my calendar and it's unclear to me whether my flight from Europe gets in the day before or that day. But I would say let's go ahead with April the 25th. I should be back in time to attend the meeting, I hope.
Mr. Chairman, Jay Leipzig, just a note too, if the hearing date is set for April 25th, if we go to the public meeting on April 19th, it's a lot of discussion. There appears to be a need for additional discussion. That hearing could always be continued. So even though you set the date, if there is a lot of, you know, additional response from the public, we could always continue that to a date certain.
Yeah, and let me express my appreciation to the people who have come here to hear about the Sunflower Plan. Thank you for coming.
This Commissioner Rast, I guess this is a question for Jay. So if we continue that and we hope that we can do the meeting on the 25th, will staff be able to send out kind of a comprehensive summary of what took place at the meeting on the 19th and any emails or anything that have come by so we have a good feel of what that meeting was like prior to our meeting on the 25th? Is that something?
Commissioner Rast, Jay Leipzig, the Planning Department. Yes, we could do that. We'll have kind of a summary of actually both meetings, as well as any additional emails or comments that we receive will all be placed on the county's website as well. So
Okay,
we'll have
great.
as much information as we can available for the public.
That sounds fantastic. Thank you.
All right. You're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the County Commission, or Planning Commission. Michelle Cricks with Johnson County Planning. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you this evening regarding the update on the airport land use compatibility update for both New Century Air Center and the Johnson County Executive Airport. I'm just going to report what happened since the last time I was before you all in January. So when I came at the January Planning Commission meeting, we were just getting ready to have our Planning Advisory Committee meeting and our public information workshops. So on January 30th, we did hold, we actually held a developer stakeholder meeting. And we invited developers that do a lot of work around both the airports, especially New Century Air Center, because there's a lot of land out there that's available for development. But we had developers, we had engineers, we had architects, and we had a really great meeting, told them about the plan, and really just basically then sat back and listened to the challenges that they face as they try to develop near the airport. Trying to build near an airport does present some new challenges that maybe if you're 5-6 miles away from the airport, you just don't have when you're trying to build within a half a mile of the airport. A little different. So it was well attended. We had some good feedback. And then immediately after we had that developer stakeholder meeting on the 30th, we had our Planning Advisory Committee meeting, and that was our second one. And we brought the Planning Advisory Committee up to date to that point. We presented some information about the airport commission process. We talked about the new updated noise contours that were generated. We showed some flight tracks and just really had a good open discussion with the cities on their perspective, also with the airport commission process. We then on January 31st and February 7th, we had our public information workshops. We had our January 31st was for New Century Air Center. And then on February 7th, we had our one at the Executive Airport. And then what was presented to our Planning Advisory Committee was also presented to that was put up on boards and presented to the public. So we are now about halfway through this process. Up to this point has been a lot of information gathering, a lot of analysis. And now we're really starting to put rubber to the road, so to speak. And our next Planning Advisory Committee meeting, which will be our third round, will be held on May 9th. Hoping to get some draft ideas in place. How are we going to have these plans drafted? So May 9th will be our next round of our Planning Advisory Committee. And then the public information workshops for each of those airports will be soon after. Those dates are being determined as I nail down the final locations for those workshops. Those workshops, we'll get them published on the website. They'll be published we'll work with the public information office with the county managers and get that out through social media as well. Just as a reminder, we do have our project workshop or public, our website. If you go here from the planning website, you can go down to land use updates, to the airport land use update. Go ahead and click here. This website has all of the slides and copies of all of the boards that were presented at both the public workshops for both airports. There are also draft chapters for chapters 1 and chapter 2 for each plan. You would find that under the documents for each respective airport, and then public involvement and public comments. There's a great page here. Okay, you can direct people here if they want to make comments on the plan, and then here are information on all of the boards that have been presented. So I just wanted to direct your attention to there. I am really getting excited about where we're moving on to the next phase of our plan. And hopefully we'll be bringing a draft reports to both the Airport Commission and the Planning Commission to hold a public hearing and receive a recommendation. And hopefully a good recommendation to take to the Board of County Commissioners. With that, I'm available for questions.
Any questions? It's a very clear report. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I have looked at the website, and I think that's very helpful also, so that people can really know what's going on. I guess I do have a question. It's kind of a general thing. I received in the mail not long ago an advertisement for homes that are kind of group homes for elderly people. And I wasn't insulted by the fact that I got that, in my personal mail, but I noted that their address was the executive airport. They were saying that they were out there. Are you familiar with some homes that have been built basically as group homes for people with maybe needing a little assisted care?
Mr. Chairman, Sean Penley, planning
Yeah.
staff. I'm not aware of anything actually on the executive airport.
Well, not on the
property.
airport,
However,
but-
there is a assisted living facility immediately adjacent to the airport property to the east. I thought it was 2 lots over, but it could be immediately adjacent. It's to the east of the executive airport in Overland Park. There is a residential development for assisted care. And then in addition to that, there was a project approved in the city of Olathe north of 151st Street and west of Quivira, but that's further away. But the one that is closest to the executive airport site is in Overland Park, and it's just to the east, but I think it should have a separate address.
They didn't put a map on there to help me orient myself, but it just strikes me that building more residential structures very close to the air pathway is maybe not very prudent planning.
Right. No, that's a good point. And we did go through the airport review. That was an example of a project that went through the airport compatibility review. So once it was approved by the city of Overland Park, it came before the Airport Commission and BOCC for compatibility with the airport. And because it was to the east of the airport property and was not within the flight corridor, and I think it was just outside the area noise impact, it was very close. It went through the review, and after review and consideration, the Airport Commission did recommend approval.
That's what you want.
Okay. Any further comments or questions? If not, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Updates and other business. Board of County Commissioners actions. I think we've received a report to that effect. Are there any questions about the BOCC's actions on recommendations from the various zoning boards?
Mr. Chairman, Jay Leipzig, just something to add. If you look at the report this month, it's fairly short. However, the zoning boards have all been working on one item that they have, the Southwest Zoning Board approved their bylaws on March 22nd, 2023. And then the Northwest Zoning Board approved their bylaws on March 20th, 2023. And we're hoping to have the final draft before the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board on April 5th. And so we're, recall the Planning Commission reviewed those last year, beginning of this year. So we're getting those together, and we'll present that for the Board of County Commissioners here in the near future.
Just out of curiosity, are there any variations between the different zoning boards?
Mr. Chairman, they're Jay Leipzig. They are all of the bylaw documents are roughly the same. It's essentially a template document, except there are some changes on the township names and that type of thing. But aside from that, they are generally the same.
Okay.
It's taken several iterations to get there, but it really is a very good document. I think as each zoning board has gone through it 3 times, I believe. And so it's going smoothly.
Great. Great. Anything further for the director's report, Mr. Leipzig?
No, Mr. Chairman, I do not.
Any comments from members of the commission? If not, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
George Lund, so moved.
Second?
11 seconds.
Hurrah, second.
I assume there's no objections. We are adjourned. Thank you. Yeah. Oh. Yeah. Not an accessory dwelling, accessory building. I wouldn't want to try.